everyone, Reaper here again with another video. All right, let's see. Are you content with your comic book collection? I know I am. Yeah, I just wanted to bring up a couple of points about this and, have a little conversation. All right, look, where I've been going with my comic book collection, I've been trimming the fat, so to speak, really trying to make all the books in my collection something that I really am proud of having, and I'm at that point where I don't need to have tons and tons of first appearances. I first got into this hobby, or at least when I came back. I'll get back to when I first got into this hobby in a few moments. But when I came back to this hobby, 2013, 2014, I wanted to get as many first appearances as possible. I like collecting first appearances. I like collecting key issues. Whatever makes it a key, first appearance being the big thing. Maybe a great cover, maybe a great story, all that sort of stuff. Okay? So I was trying to accumulate everything. And it was like I couldn't get content with what I had, It was almost had the opposite effect from over 10 years ago to now. Now I've reached the point where I've trimmed the collection down a bit. It's not completely trimmed down. There's maybe a little bit more fat on it that needs to be trimmed, but I've gotten to the point where I'm pretty content with what I have. And I'm curious are you also content with what you have? That was really the first point I wanted to make. Second point, I could sit back. The second point deals with complaints. I could sit back and say, I'm very happy with what I have. Like I said, I'm content and all that stuff. I'm happy where I finally got to be when it comes to my collection. And, again, with the people that are constantly complaining about what they collect or what they wasted time collecting, they're ready to get out of it, all that stuff. Comic books are worthless, all that sort of stuff. Well, I would say that a lot of these people that have books, I would say that, your comic books are pretty worthless. I'm not saying that to be mean, but, I've seen some of these people and their collections. And, I think in the long run, you have to make better decisions with what you collect. I think sometimes we get all sucked up, like what I was talking about a few moments ago, getting every single first appearance. No, I don't need every single first appearance. Now, there are some people that like to do that and they collect that way. That's their business. But I see some of these videos where they're selling their books or they're trying to get rid of their books, and I'm looking at them and I'm saying, although some very, very nice books, right? I'm not dissing them. But I don't know, maybe the grades are not necessarily the greatest. And I'll cover this in a little bit. I'll talk a little bit more about this as we get closer to the video. But, my point is, there are a lot of complaints. I think that in order to get to the point where I'm at in this hobby, or maybe some of you are in similar situations where you get to a point where you're content, you're happy, whatever way you want to call it, you have to have the heart for collecting. Your heart has to be in it. And I think that's the truth. I think a lot of people that get into the hobby, if they get into the hobby for the wrong reasons, and I know when you say wrong reasons, that could be controversial. There's no wrong reason for collecting. Okay, maybe not. But I think if you're hyper-focused on perhaps value, and things don't always turn out for you, I think you're going to have complaints and you're not going to be content, and you quit, you want out, you give up, all that sort of stuff. Now, let's go back to the V word, value. You can't go too far in this hobby without talking about value. We could try to pretend that, no, I'm into this for the reading. No, I'm pretty sure you didn't buy Amazing Fantasy 15 because you wanted to read it. You could read a reprint of that at any time. You're into it because, yes, there are a lot of things that get you into the hobby, like me, but I think you can't go too far without discussing value. So we can't ignore the elephant in the room. And I've said this on this channel many, many times because it's true. Okay? But getting back to what I was saying about the heart, I think you have to have a general love for comics and what they represent above all else. Granted, value sometimes takes over, right? But you have to have the starting point of that. And I think a lot of these people, and I could be wrong, But I do think that a lot of these people that are frustrated, they're upset with their collections, all that stuff, I don't think they really had the heart for it. Maybe some did, and somehow they lost their heart in it. That's possible too, right? But I think a majority never really did. They saw the value. They got wrapped up in the movies. They got caught up in the mystique of it. They got caught up in the intrigue of it. They got caught up in like, wow, what is this? I remember these superheroes when I was a kid. Now we got all these movies and the comics are worth something. I think they got caught up in it, and it kind of went downhill for a lot of them. And I think they made a lot of poor decisions with some of the books that they've purchased. And it kind of shows their inexperience when it comes to this hobby. Then does that mean like someone like me or somebody older that's been in this hobby longer, like Dr. Von Chilla or Patrick or Mike or whatever, they don't make mistakes? No, we all tend to make mistakes too. But I think with the people that I just mentioned, including myself, there's a little bit more investment in this hobby, and that investment comes from the heart, from our original desire, our enjoyment of the hobby. Dr. Von Chilla loves collecting for covers, and he liked horror books the way I liked it. So did Mike. Patrick liked his superhero books and a bunch of other things. There's a starting point for all of us. I'll get to my starting point, and you've heard this before. But I genuinely, when I was collecting those Marvel Masterpieces cards back in 1992, and I got introduced to really a broad view of Marvel superheroes that I didn't even know existed, like the X-Men and Iron Man and the Fantastic Four. I never knew those characters existed. I knew of Captain America. I've heard of Thor, largely because of that Adventures in Babysitting movie that came out a few years earlier. And I knew of Spider-Man, but everybody else I had no idea about. So it really broadened my horizons when it came to superheroes. So when I saw in the back of those cards the first cover appearance and read about the first appearance, I said, wow, maybe I'm missing out on something. Maybe I should be reading comics. I knew of Batman and Superman, of course, Wonder Woman and a few others many years earlier. I think, I was mainly introduced to DC, as many of us were, through Superman and Batman, I think. So that's how I got into it. I was like, wow, maybe I should look into getting some of these comics. And true be said, after you get into them, you're introduced to value not too long after that. But my initial interest in it was like, wow, maybe I should check out some of these books. It'd be interesting to see when this character first showed up in first appearances. That was what got me into it. Or at least brought me into the collecting field. I loved reading Tales from the Crypt reprints. So my heart was into it. I was really becoming a comic book collector. And of course, value started to, I started to become a little bit more aware of value back then, and definitely more aware of it today with some of the things that I pick up. So long story short, too late with this point, I think you have to have, the heart, the initial heart in this hobby. In order for you to eventually get to a point where you're content. Now, some people may very well be content with selling. Then that's it. But I think for the people that complain all the time, I don't know if the true passion for it was really there. How could you be so passionate about something then all of a sudden not be passionate about it? Oh, I've had a very bad experience, some might say. The value went down. Well, yeah, the value went down for a lot of these things. I'm still in it. I still like it, and so many people are too. And so many of our books that we have are still very, very valuable. Some may have lost value along the way, absolutely. There's no doubt about that, but some have not. And that goes with trying to pick the right book to keep, like I was saying earlier about thinning out the collection. Well, you got to sometimes be a little more wise with what you keep, what you bring into the collection, and ultimately what you get rid of, to either put money back into your bank account or reinvest into the hobby. And this leads to my very, very last point that kind of been touching up on a little bit. I'm content largely because I collect quality over quantity. Again, I used to collect a lot of first appearances. It was great. Going back to those Marvel Masterpieces cards, Series 1 from Joe Jesko. I told him when I met him, you were the one that really got me into comics, and he found that amusing. He probably is told that often, but he told his wife, And he says, hey, he said this to me. And she's like, oh, okay. But I found that to be great, that I finally got to meet somebody. It's someone that was meaningful to me, not just some guy that drew comics. It's just like, man, you really were the one that brought me into the hobby. So again, going back to that whole heart thing, even though times have changed, we've all changed, gotten older, a little wiser. Some a little less wiser, I don't know. But I like quality over quantity, and that's why you've been seeing on my channel over the last few years, trimming the collection and upgrading books. I'm upgrading my books. I'm concentrating on upgrading books because I love these books and I want something very nice in my collection. And if you love something, you want quality, right? Or you're at least working towards quality. There's about a handful, maybe a couple handfuls, to be honest, of books that I've never owned, that I maybe have owned and would like to bring back for whatever reason. Very few. But there's a couple handfuls of those type of books. I don't want too much when it comes to new books. Do not. Whereas again, like I was saying 10 years ago, oh, I need to get the first appearance. This person, that one, ooh, that one. Now it's like, well, I could use a couple of these and a couple of those. It's mainly just bringing out the quality in my collection. And how do you do that? Through upgrading. And I love upgrading. Sometimes I can upgrade from one low point to a very high point, and sometimes it's a bit of a slow pace up there because of, there we go again with the V word, value, or P, price, all that sort of stuff. So, that's just where I'm at. Again, going back to some of the things I've seen people sell, yeah, it's really cool that some people may have a 6.5 Amazing Spider-Man 129. I'm not dissing it, but I think it's a lot cooler to have a 9.4. It's like driving, a Corolla versus a Lexus. Corolla is a very good car. It's very admirable, and it'll get you where you need to go, and it'll last a while. It's beautiful. Well, some of us no longer want the Corolla. We want our Lexus. We want something that's really good. And that's just the way I see it when it comes between maybe a 6.5 and a 9.4 or a 9.2 or higher. Quality over quantity makes everything a little bit more worthwhile, at least for me. Now, please, as I close this video, don't take anything I said offensively. Sometimes the comic book community, as well as some other communities, are so sensitive to everything. Like, oh, well, I can't afford a 9.4. A lot of people can't. I'm not saying that that's a negative thing. I'm saying that sometimes, though, we aspire or hope to get something that's closer to that, and we're really into it, and it only brings out the best in us when it comes to our collection, that we're really say, hey, I would love to have a 9.4 of this or a 9.2 one day when I could afford it. Like, I have a 1.8 Detective Comics 140. It's not much. One day I'd like to upgrade to a 3.0 and eventually continue on. But the journey there is worthwhile for me. I'm focused on bringing that first appearance of the Riddler to a higher grade in my collection because I care so much about that book. Rather than, oh, I got to get this, 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 all these new books. I don't need that. I want to try to get my Lexus. Okay? But if you don't want the Lexus and you're happy with your Corolla, that's good too. It's still good to have. But I'm just saying, these are just some things that make me content with where I'm at in collecting. And maybe some of you can identify with that. Maybe some of you cannot. But remember, slow and steady wins the race. It's not a race to get the most. Take it steady, take it carefully, and I think it will be very worthwhile and ultimately make you very content and happy. That could maybe be said with anything. Thank you all for watching, okay? Take care.